just thinking, wow, these guys nailed it. When they said this is 2017, they were only off by, they pretty much nailed the time frame pretty well.
They
You're
did.
wonderful
They
to
did.
see. You ought to be in pictures.
For example, last night, everybody went to bed. I was still awake because I took a big nap in the afternoon, and I watched The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, love it.
And it's because there were some things in that film that really struck me, not having watched it in a number of years.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a movie I absolutely love. I mean Schwarzenegger was like my dude when I was kind of a kid growing up and a young teenager. He was
Yeah.
probably the first actor I really latched onto, and The Running Man was definitely one of those movies that I watched again and again and again and again. It probably has more one-liners in it than any of the others.
Oh, there's some
But
good, Killian, I'll be back. Only in a rerun.
Get set!
Killian, I'll be back.
Only in a rerun.
right, it's so good, and it's based on a Stephen King novel as
It
well.
is. I'm aware of that. Yeah.
But it was interesting because I taught a class randomly during COVID in the summer. I taught a remote class to a Korean university summer school
Hmm.
class, and it was all about dystopian futures.
Right.
And I did it with another guy, and he did a whole bunch of Korean movies, and could pick like just other movies that would tie in. And because of sort of Squid Game and what have you,
Yeah.
I picked The Running Man as one of my movies. So I did a whole like sort of hour-long lecture
Yeah.
about sort of the Running Man and the history of sort of gladiatorial combat and why we kind of like it so much. And obviously that bleeds into Squid Game and what have you. And yeah, it was one of the ones they were most responsive to. I mean, sitting down a group of sort of 20-year-olds, about 30, 20-year-olds, mainly almost entirely actually from Korea or China, and
Right.
showing them the Running Man was kind of nuts. It kind of sort of blew their minds a little bit.
Well, what I thought was ironic watching this was how prescient it was. Excuse me. It was 1987 that film came
Mm.
out. And at the beginning, when they give you the initial, not dialogue, but when they give you text at the beginning, what do they call that?
A scroll or something.
Yeah, just kind of an establishment background. We're in the year 2017, and here we are in 2024, and America has become a fascist, authoritarian state. I'm thinking, yeah, 2016 is when we elected Trump. So it was funny how that prescient fascism, authoritarianism, something that we would have kind of seen as just a satire in 1987. Like there was no way America could ever drift that way. And seeing the fusion of fake news being used in order to establish a narrative that we're actually doing what's best for you, even though we're taking away all your freedoms, all your liberties, and just kind of force feeding you a game to keep the bread and circuses of Rome.
Sure. And then even more so at the end, towards the end, where you see sort of behind the curtain a little bit, and they're using sort of deep fake technology,
Yes.
AI, in order to rewrite
Yeah.
events as well. I mean, yeah, you see how the initial massacre that apparently Ben Richards,
Right.
Schwarzenegger's character,
Yeah.
participated in, that's all been like taken out of context in order to make it look like he was doing the opposite of what he was doing. But then at the end, when they literally map his face onto another character so that they can kill him off on
Yes.
screen and all that kind of stuff, you're like, okay, yeah, that's basically where we're at now. And you have
Yeah.
you don't have control of your likeness anymore, and it can be manipulated and used for whatever purposes.
Which would have been total science fiction in 1987, but today it's what we're living with now. And I just kept thinking it's too bad that it isn't so easy to topple authoritarian systems as it is in Running Man, because whether it's Running Man or They Live or a couple other films that I can think of, there's always, if we could just get to the relay which is
That's
beaming up to the signal, and if we could just knock out that satellite, the whole government will come crashing down.
Well, it's kind of like a sort of Wizard of Oz thing, isn't it? It's like, well, if you pull back the curtain and expose the wizard for what he really is, then everybody will be like, oh yeah, sure, okay, fine. But
Yeah.
sadly, no one cares.
No,
That's
that's the problem is it's that curtain gets pulled back many, many times, and that's what happened with. I mean, not that I want to get overly political in our movie review show, but that was the naiveness I had in 2016, 2017 when I said before I come from an evangelical background. Surely when the evangelical Christians who espouse Christianity and the teachings of Christ see Trump for what he is, when the curtain is pulled back, surely they will, give up their support of him. And
Yeah,
boy,
no.
was I wrong.
Well, we look at it right now. We're recording this in what, mid-January 2024, and Trump is literally going from courtroom to rally, from courtroom
Yes,
to
to rallies.
and no one cares.
No, no,
And
no.
he can say whatever he wants about the courtrooms. He's like, oh, the kangaroo courts, it's all fake,
Yeah,
and all the
yeah.
rest of it, it's all unjust. And no, yeah, nobody cares about what's true and
No,
what's not.
no,
People
no. I
make their
just,
minds up so quickly, and they're
mm,
stuck with it. Um, and yeah, you
but
see that. I mean, obviously Running Man is kind of heightened and a sort of pantomime version of that, but I love how kind of kitschy it is, how similar to sort of the show American Gladiators
yeah, yeah.
it is, where you have different adversaries, different stalkers as they're called in that. um the gladiators who sort of take you on, and they've all got a particular theme and a particular
Yeah.
weapon of choice and an arena of choice and all the rest of it, whether it's Sub-Zero or Buzzsaw or
Yeah.
Captain Freedom. Yeah, and it's ironic that
Jesse Ventura, I love it.
yeah, exactly. So you've got all these real wrestlers coming in doing that part. But it was funny that even back then, sort of the poster boy of this fascist state was calling himself Captain Freedom.
Yes,
That
ironically.
kind of rhetoric that we saw again being used sort of many
Mhm.
years later.
And Richard Dawson just oozes slime ball. He is so perfect for this role. It's too bad he wasn't used in more acting, but they really took his game show persona from the Family Feud, upped it to 11, and just let him
Mm.
run with all the worst attributes of a authoritarian game show host in a dystopian future. He was brilliant to watch.
He really was. I mean, and it's another way of subverting the audience's expectations of
Yes,
what this show. It's a way of legitimizing the format of like the
right.
Running Man show for an audience, because as you say, you're used to watching him do what was it called, Family Feud or whatever it's
Family
called.
Feud,
And
yeah.
yeah, see, we get that game show. We do our own version of it, and it's called Family Fortunes, I think, or something like that. And it's
Yeah,
obviously not him. So
right.
when I first saw this movie, I didn't know him from that, and he's always been Killian from Running Man for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
But yeah, but it's a interesting device that you see used again and again and again. I was writing something about um sort of fake documentaries and ghost stories not too long ago, and there's obviously lots of really famous examples, but there was a really famous one called Ghost Watch on UK TV back in I think it was the late 80s or very early 90s, which was played on Halloween night, and it was like a fake show where they were going to go to a haunted house and see what
Mhm.
happened that night. And they used Michael Parkinson and Sarah Green, like real legitimate TV personalities playing themselves, and that gave the whole thing a degree of authenticity. But the fact that he was in it as himself presenting the show, well, it was like, well, we have to trust Parky because he's,
Right.
you know,
He legitimized as it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The fact that it was on the BBC and that it was Michael Pogson doing it, just sold it to an audience, and that's very similar to what Running Man is
Yeah.
doing as well.
Yeah, another thing that Running Man captured too was in 1987, although reality TV has always been part of us as long as we've had TV, it really only exploded, particularly in America, after, say, Survivor in 2000. And then we just have had 20 years of a plethora of the Kardashians to,
Mm.
Big Brother house and all this. But in the Running Man, they would insert those commercials, and they had like the guy who's climbing this rope with these
Oh yeah,
dogs under
climbing for dollars. Yeah.
climbing for dollars. It's just wonderfully prescient how it captured in these commercials that reality team show thing that we have within us, where we want to see somebody else's pain. We want, from the comfort of our couch in our own house, to see someone else having this moment, of
Oh,
the
do you
guy
mean
climbing the rope.
like Schadenfreude? Do you mean that? Where you
Maybe
take
that's it.
take delight in other
Liked in
people's
other people's
misfortune?
pain. Yeah, yeah. That's a good substitute. That wasn't the word I was looking for, but yeah, the Running Man, just uh, watching it again after a few years, and in our present political tensions in America and the Western
Mm.
world in general. I'm just thinking, wow, these guys nailed it. When they said this is 2017, they were only off by, they pretty much nailed the time frame pretty
Actually,
well.
they did. They did. Yeah, no, it's a film that I've always had a very a great deal of affection for. It was one of the ones I watched again and again and again at a very impressionable age because it's like it's very funny.
Yeah.
It's really violent.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
And it
surprisingly, there was some
mm,
parts in it that I had forgotten how violent it was.
yeah, for what it is, for something that's kind of as goofy as it is and high
Yeah, yeah,
concept as it is, you're like, whoa, okay. All the
yeah,
kills really kind of go for it. It came out at
yeah,
that time.
yeah,
But, I guess it was before Schwarzenegger really kind of took over the world and became a little
yeah.
bit protective of his image. That he
Right,
was willing to
right.
do these slightly sort of dirtier, grimier,
Yeah,
more bloodier movies. I mean, he did this the same year he did Predator. So,
right.
you
Well,
know,
he did a lot of these high concept films in the late 80s, like Predator, but then Total Recall. He
yeah.
became like, where Charlton Heston kind of in the early 70s with
Oh, good
Omega
call.
Man and Planet of the Apes, where he kind of dominated a particular genre of a dystopian future. Schwarzenegger did it about 15 years later in the late 80s. With this, he kind of monopolized this genre for a short period of time and made some wonderful films that really stand up. I mean, watching Running Man again, yeah, I mean, some things are a little bit off, but by
Mm.
and large, the film stands up.
Oh, I think it really does. I think it has the benefit of being in a game show TV format
Yeah,
because because on TV, a game show set is never going to look realistic and you're not expecting it to.
right.
You know what
Oh,
I mean?
yeah,
And so there's a degree of kind of sort of flimsy artifice to the whole
right.
look of it
Yeah,
anyway. So I
yeah.
think that helps it sort of not date in a way.
Yes, yeah,
Here's a random bit of trivia. All the dancers on the show at the
yeah,
beginning?
yeah.
The choreography for all of that was done by Paula Abdul. So,
As you started to say this, like this little memory from
uh-huh.
decades ago, I'm going, that was Paula Abdul. And when you said it,
It
I wouldn't
absolutely
have
was.
thought of it until you brought it up. But yeah, good call there.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And yeah, and it was just fun to see so many um of the stalkers being played by like real professional wrestlers and sportsmen. Like you got Jim Brown. He was an American football
Yes,
player, I think,
big
wasn't
football player. Yeah, yeah.
he? Yeah. And then
Jesse
Jesse,
Ventura.
of
Yeah,
course.
even Domino was a like an opera singer as well.
That's
He would do
right.
this. Yeah,
And the guy who played Sub-Zero, I forget his name, was like Ken Tanaka or something like that, was a I think he was I don't think he was Japanese, or I think he was like a sort of Pacific Islander or something like that,
yeah, yeah,
without looking it up. But he also was like a wrestler or a weightlifter or
yeah,
something like that. So they really sort of pulled in all like these legitimate sort of sports
yeah.
personalities to sort of do it. It's great.
Yeah. So for you listeners, watchers out there, if you want a good film to rewatch, Running Man, 1987, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh yeah, brilliant,
You
brilliant.
ought
Now
to
more
be
than ever.
in pictures.
That was a good
You're
rewatch.
wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be. Your voice.